Well, I'm Josh Pape. I'm Executive Vice President at Chickasaw Community Bank and President of our Oklahoma City market. I oversee lending, treasury management, and retail banking for the bank. Been in banking since early January 2008. Started with a big bank, Bank of America, and I've kind of worked my way down from a regional bank now into a smaller community bank. And I've been with the bank, Chickasaw Community Bank, formerly Bank 2, collectively for almost 7.5 years now. So that's professionally, that's a little bit about me. I office here at Oklahoma City. I'm a Oklahoma native, born and raised in Oklahoma. Spent a few years in Arkansas, but been back in Oklahoma since 2011.
I always loved Oklahoma, and that's, let's say, where our family's all from. But yes, we've got the Native American side. I think pretty much everybody that's a native Oklahoman has some level of that.
Yep.
But both the Cherokee and Choctaw side both. So that's what got me attracted to what we do. So, here on the FinTech Cowboys, we try to show bankers different ways to make money and different ways to be productive in the community. And love FinTech and love Bass banks and all that stuff. But and really, I think the coolest part about it for us is the fact that the technology can reach further than it has in the past. And that's not always true for Native Americans, but for the most part, it's a true statement.
Yep.
And for you guys to be focused on,
I'm with you on the seeing specific groups piece, but I'd ask you, Josh. So we've talked a lot about, let's just say, the dynamic of community. And I think for a long time, we've all defined community and community banking as geography, right? And I think you've got some of that surely, right? But you've also got, other community that you're serving. And I think technology is an interesting way that we can get outside of that geographic definition. And that's a good thing for those different groups of people in those different communities that we can serve, right? But it's got to be a challenge, right? And what do you guys do on the technology of that? Is there any, I would imagine it's a weird footprint to try and manage, right?
Yeah. So, we're kind of background on what we're most known for in helping serve Native Americans across the country. We've done home loans from close to the North Pole all the way down to the most southern tip of you guys' home state there in Texas. So, and down to Florida. So we've kind of geography, when you talk about defining community beyond geographical boundaries, I don't, there's not a whole lot of better examples than that. We are the largest bank provider of the HUD 184 Native American home loan in the country. I think there's a couple larger providers, originators that are non-bank specific. But the bank is owned. We're the only bank that's wholly owned by a Native American tribe, which is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, there are other tribes who have ownership in banks, but we're wholly owned with one shareholder, that being the Chickasaw Nation. And so obviously a big passion when the bank was formed, 20 plus years ago now, at the time, Native Americans owned homes at the lowest single rate of any demographic in the country. That's since changed, thanks to this HUD 184 Native American home loan product. So the technology aspect of that, of course, has had to adapt over the years. 20 years ago, the way you originated mortgage loans was a lot of telephone. Google obviously was around, but you weren't messing a whole lot with search engine optimization and so forth. And people were fine filling out a paper 1003 and mailing it to you or faxing it to you, or if you were lucky, they might have a scanner or access to it and scan it to you. And of course, now across the mortgage industry as a whole, that the way you access customers has totally changed. So we've had to adapt, and especially with a community that we do all kinds of home loans, not just to Native Americans. We're a federally regulated bank like anybody. So you don't have to be Native American to be here, but obviously we have a big heart for serving Native American community, both from our heritage as a bank and just, we were able to help play a part in solving that problem of them having home ownership at the lowest rate of any demographic. So, but the way we've had to leverage technology, of course, has changed over the years to, now people apply for mortgages from their phone. Right. The way you disclose, the way your loan origination system is set up, and the way you send and receive disclosures and acknowledgement. Of course, some of that's beefed up, the CFPB was introduced over that 20-year span, and it's kind of beefed up some of the regulatory and compliance requirements. So technology has had to adapt, and the way we reach Native Americans has had to adapt. Google, we've had to be really good at Google and search engine optimization, and how to pop when you Google about, Native American home loan, Indian home loan, or what have you. So you got to be good from the marketing standpoint on technology. And then you have to make a really a not so cumbersome process for people to apply. Home loans, there's more than a handful of different products. There's a lot of details when you get into these government sponsored programs like a HUD 184 loan. So the way in which you relay that information up front to your borrower, the way in which you give them access to inquire or apply has certainly had to adapt. You've had to get better about offering a mobile application, automating and being very efficient with your disclosure process and so forth. So
can you help us out here? I guarantee you there's a ton of bankers watching that are probably going, so what is what's the right word here? We got tribal designated housing entities. We got Native American Revolving Loan Fund. There's, and I know this is all like a designation or a piece of a Cdfi. Kind of go through the vocabulary for a normal banker and how they can participate to help Native Americans.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'll start with Cdfi. It's a acronym that banks are familiar with. Some know a lot about it, some don't. It's a community development financial institution. You don't have to be a bank to be a Cdfi, but many banks are Cdfis. And the simple definition is that your primary financing activities have to serve a what's defined as a target market. So for us, we're a Native American Cdfi. So because the majority of our loan activity, primarily through our home loan programs, majority of our financing activity goes to Native Americans, which is an underserved community. We've had that Cdfi designation for quite some time. And so you can be a non-Native American Cdfi. You can reach other target markets through geographic definitions or underserved communities. So some banks, and you'd find geographically some concentrations of banks that are Cdfis, but most banks are not. So we're a little unique in that. There's only a handful of banks in Oklahoma that are. So when you're a Cdfi, you're eligible to receive grants as a bank, and those grants usually have requirements around them, what that money can be used for. And so in the past, we have been able to receive grants awarded to us as a Cdfi and turn around and use that in the form of down payment assistance programs for Native American home buyers. And most recently, we were awarded a grant to be used to help Native American business owners that were negatively impacted by COVID. And so we were able to create a revolving loan fund that we can loan money to small businesses that may not be, quote unquote, bankable through normal standards, and use that grant money to help capitalize that program essentially and help offset some of the risk, because you're intentionally loaning to people that have had some hardship. So, your credit risk goes up. So we were able to use some grant funds to stand that revolving loan fund program out and deploy a little over $1.5 million into Native American owned small businesses. And then we kind of, one of the things that we've done that's really cool and something we're super passionate about, our motto at the bank, or our mission statement, is building better lives for everyone. And when we say building better lives, a lot of that's housing, of course, is a passion. So building housing. And so we've been able to kind of live that mission out as a Cdfi by loaning. We've financed over $100 million to tribal designated housing entities. So TDHEs, you could look it up. But basically, a tribe may have its own housing authority, right, and it will provide housing to its members, affordable housing to its members who may not have great housing options where they live. So we've done over 100 million in affordable housing projects in Oklahoma, Alaska, and around the country. And some of the before and after pictures of seeing families that were literally living where I'm from, Cherokee County, the Cherokee Nation capital of the world. We've got before and after pictures of families that were living in a school bus and now live in a great brick 3-bedroom, 2-bath home for their family. And so as a Cdfi, it's really cool to be able to use that status, receive grants, not just to take the money as income, but to turn it around and deploy it to yes, make more loans, which helps profit the bank, which is great. We're a for-profit entity and we're unapologetic about that, but to also serve a mission.
Hey, Josh, now a regular banker, is it right that he can buy like a bond and a CDFI, get a CRE credit for that and actually earn a pretty good yield, right?
There's a ton of ways in which a non-CDFI bank can participate with a bank like ours. We could participate loans to those entities or what have you. Yes, it bolsters your CRA credit, and it's a great way to know that you're putting some resources behind the CDFI that's got a mission to serve certain populations, but also you get the benefit of the CRA credit. But I'd have to follow up with you on that, Dave. I'm not familiar with that, but I know you can place deposits in CDFI banks and get credits and so forth. So
yeah, if anybody's trying to figure that out, get in touch with us. We'll put you in touch with the right guys. But yeah,
I'm thinking about CDBA is a great one. I think they've got 100 or so CDFIs, and they do a great job of educating everybody. So check out CDBA.
It's a neat way for a banker, maybe he's in a geographically challenged area to try to find good qualified opportunities where you can still do some serious good at the same time. You get the credit for the local CRA, like I say, and get a higher yield. So it's a win-win for everybody. And I love these types of programs that get stood up to go, it's easy for the federal government to look forward, but it's damn hard for them to look backwards sometimes. And I think programs like this are just fantastic. And tell us about the Native American Revolving Loan Fund program. That was a mouthful.
Yeah. So revolving loan funds, I kind of first became privy to that, doing some research about how nonprofits typically hold revolving loan funds with funds allocated by, I believe, the U.S. Department of Commerce. I could have got that department wrong, but from a federal level. And so I like the concept of being able to loan money to businesses that are struggling to get started, or they've run into some challenges. They need capital. They've got a great idea. They're providing employment to other people. But we're all familiar, if you're a banker listening to this call, that we all have loan reviews. We all have bank exams, and you can't just go be totally mission minded in your loan practices. You've got to keep in mind credit risk. And so I'm really passionate about business owners in general, and I'm super passionate about minority-owned businesses that are out there providing jobs for people and making an impact in their local communities. So there were a number of ways when we got this grant that we could have deployed it. Didn't have to be in this particular type of vehicle, but when we met as a leadership team, we have been so focused on the housing piece since our inception or origination as a bank. We've got a $1.5 billion 184 mortgage servicing asset. We've originated over $1 billion in HUD 184 loans ourselves. And then I spoke to some of the affordable housing projects kind of from more of a commercial level that we've done. And so we haven't really used the CDFI status to dive into the business owner world yet. And so when we got this grant awarded, it was a really cool shift to kind of make and say, we're doing that really well. How can we help business owners with this? And so the team got together, we brainstormed, we thought it'd be really cool to have some allocated money that we can loan essentially risk-free, use that to offset any losses that may occur, still underwrite them and make sure we're putting people in the position to pay back. Certainly don't want their business to suffer or get burdened. But we stood that up last year. It wasn't a huge fund. It's like I said, it's just over $1.5 million we've deployed. But we've been able to we were able to make a loan to a Native American charter school here in Oklahoma City that they were waiting on some funding from the federal government. So they had the money right there. They just had expenses until that they had to show is a reimbursement grant. So they had to show they had spent the money to get the money. Well, they didn't have the money to spend, right? So how can we go get the money if we don't have the money? And so we were able to, make them a loan. So, that's a nonprofit, but we've done it to for-profit businesses. We've had home health care companies that obviously were impacted by the pandemic. And, I could name some other types, trucking companies and so forth. So that's been really cool. Again, it was kind of a limited limited pool, not a ton of money, but it'll be neat to see how those relationships, the goal is those people could transition from the revolving loan fund and become a traditional credit customer, right? They have some financials they can now report. They'll have some tenure. They'll kind of recover from the pandemic. And, we may be able to transition them out of that program, and that money then may become available for use by another Native American business owner.
You might have the next Elon Musk in there. You never know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, you'll sure never know.
You never know.
Money.
Yeah. No, just look at community banking as a whole and think about access to credit, right, at a local level, and how much your community better than the big four, to say the least, right? It's just such a difference maker. And so I appreciate you, and I'm sure everybody else does too. And I know damn sure your community does. So doing a good job, man. It's good to hear.
Yeah. So thank you.
I've got another couple of crazy questions here on this. You sent me a note here about the Cdfi wave during PPP.
Yeah. So, if you're a banker listening to this call, PPP, you may have a few different types of emotional reactions to that acronym. Interesting time for all of us, of course. A lot of good was done during that time. What we saw was, you had round one and round two of PPP, and then round two, as funds started depleting, and of course in the last couple weeks of round two, there was a lot of money left, and we weren't seeing a lot of applications. It was it'd been socialized so much and talked about so much. It was like, if you want to apply for PPP loan, people knew, and we started seeing the applications slow down. Thought, hey, the program was going to expire. I think at the end of, June 1st is when it expired, regardless if there's money left. Well, unexpectedly, about the beginning of May, maybe it was late April, the SBA, I believe it was the SBA, I can't remember if Treasury or SBA made the call, but the call was made to limit applications to where only CDFIs or MDIs, minority-owned depository institutions, which we are that as well. We are a minority depository institution and a CDFI. But either or, you had to be one of those two things to be able to originate PPP loans. And which at the time that was announced, we really didn't think much of it. It was kind of like, well, we're not getting a whole lot of applications. But what we found was, I lost count at about 30, but at least more than 30 banks here in Oklahoma, some around the country, reached out to us and asked if they could send their client's application to us. Of course, with the client's permission, right? But they were working on it for one reason or another. They hadn't got to it yet, and the program shut off literally in an instant, and they didn't know what to do. And these are people that needed that access to capital. So it was a really cool position to be in. It was like the first week or two of the original PPP all over again. It was a mad rush for application. And it was a cool example of community bankers working together, because there hasn't been one instance where, bankers were not worried about, is Josh and his team going to call on this person after PPP's over. They just wanted to help their client, and we wanted to help them help their client. And so we did hundreds of loans. I kind of call it the CDFI wave. It was like this unexpected wave of PPP loans that came in when the program got limited. But it was just a really neat example of community bankers working together. And us kind of getting to be one of a few CDFI banks here in Oklahoma, getting to help those other bankers and their clients. And I made a ton of new friends in community banking, received a ton of thank you notes. Our team, we worked around the clock for other people's customers, right? Those were not our customers, and we didn't have to take them, but we wanted to make an impact on our community. And we knew that we are fortunate to be a CDFI and an MDI, and far be it from us to selfishly not want to work some extra hours for a few weeks when there's people still in need that we just didn't expect.
I'll tell you what,
bankers helping bankers.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that, they're just, the word bank turns them off. And then you hear these stories like this, and it's a bigger, richer community than a lot of people give it credit to be. And I don't mean rich in finances. I mean rich in heart, and the way bankers come together to help each other and help their communities. It's unbelievable. It's a community spirit that's all across small towns all over America. And everybody doesn't see that if they don't, how banking is. Everybody lives in Chicago or San Francisco or New York. And man, they don't even know these little towns exist. And that's where the living and dying and the feeding the world comes from, is right in here and this stuff. And these are a lot of people that, whether it be farmers or whether it be Native Americans or minority group that's in just a bad way. And to have programs that can reach out and help them, and have other bankers be participants in those programs, even though they're not necessarily primary program members, it's just so cool. And it serves so much. And again, to the FinTech kids out there that don't think that there's anything cool in banking, this is pretty cool.
So they don't understand the distinction between the big four and community banks.
That's it.
That's it.
I tell everybody, if they just Christmas Eve tune in and watch It's a Wonderful Life, it's the greatest story ever of what community banking is and what it would be like without George Bailey, right?
You got it.
And I think that's a big thing for all of us. And
absolutely,
every one of those families that you guys have helped has got to just fill your heart. And when you think about the good that's being done there, now just for a second, close your eyes and remove these guys from the equation. What does it look like now? Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a sock in the gut. And so the positives, you may not get enough pat on the back or attaboys or whatever. But Josh, I'll tell you what, I hope we did a little bit today to kind of further your cause and let people know the good things you're doing. And I hope everybody in your community is proud of you.
Yeah,
I am. Appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Hey,
all right. Any parting thoughts you want to leave? The
final
bankers?
thoughts, man.
Yeah,
final thoughts.
Tell the bankers what they need to do.
Oh man,
how can they help?
Gosh, final thoughts. I got so many in community bank. I'd say one, I think sometimes there's a stigma about CDFI banks. There's a stigma about MDI banks. I sit on the minority-owned bank council for the ICBA, and it's a great chance to get to hear what's going on around the country with banks that serve these communities. And sometimes there's a little bit of a stigma about what we do, or hey, I know that we get asked often, do you have to be Native American to bank there or work there? And the answer is no. We're a bank like anyone else. Our mission of building better lives for everyone is not just for Native Americans. We do a ton of loans to members of the community, regardless of race, of course. And so, but there's a stigma sometimes that comes along with what CDFIs do and what they're about, and that they might be different, but it just couldn't be farther from the truth. A CDFI that's a bank specifically is typically your community bank, but with a lot cooler tools in your belt that you can pull out and use. And so get to know them. You can look up online CDFIs in your community. And so if you're a bank and you're not a CDFI, man, go meet the president or lender or whoever at that bank. And get to know them, what they can do, and how you can help them. Whether, like I said, loan participations at times are a huge benefit to small banks, right? You get concentrated in this area or the other, and there may be something in that for you if you're participating in a loan to an underserved community. In our case, a Native American business owner. We do a ton of loans for Native American business owners outside of this revolving loan fund, and in our case, we were able to help non-CDFI banks clients, right? So you just never know when there will come a day again where that status can be leveraged to help your clients through partnership with a CDFI.
Isn't it Brian Blake that runs
Yeah, Brian Blake runs CDBA, which is a association of CDFIs.
Right.
And there's a bunch of folks, and there's Quantic, and there's another Native American bank up, I want to say Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota in there, and a bunch of cool folks.
Here's the deal. Go to bankershelpingbankers.com. It's free for banks. Go there and ask that question. Where do I find somebody? I guarantee you there'll be 100 people in there trying to direct you and help you get there. That's what Bankers Helping Bankers is all about.
Yeah.
Big reason why we wanted to grab Josh and get him in here so you guys can see this stuff and see that, hey, there's a lot of neat things going on here that maybe you want to participate in. Not trying to shove it down your throat, but there's good opportunities to do some good things. And most bankers are all about doing it.
And when we all stop, lay the swords down and help each other, good things happen.
That's right.
I appreciate it. Josh, you ever need a favor, you give me a call.
Amen.
Same here. I appreciate you riding with the
club. I appreciate it, guys. I look forward to coming to the next FinTech Roundup, guys.
Hey, all right. We'll see you in November.